Coming up, we take a look at some rumors alleging a Pixar Pier-style land is being considered for Disney's Hollywood Studios, what 20th Century Fox properties could come to the parks, and is Dinoland USA in the Animal Kingdom next up for an overhaul? All that and more on the way. This is the Magic Weekly, episode 148 for the week of February 23rd, 2020. Hello everyone and welcome to the Magic Weekly, a weekly Disney questions and answers show covering all things Walt Disney World and beyond. This episode of the Magic Weekly is sponsored by DVCReservations.com. DVCReservations.com offers easy on-site rentals to all the Disney Vacation Club resorts at a steep discount to Disney rack rates. And if you're a DVC owner, there's never been a better time to list DVC points, making sure that none of your DVC contract gets wasted. With high demand pricing freedom and the team that does all the work for you, DVCReservations.com is ready to make the magic for you. I'm your host, Brayden, creator of Mickey Views, coming from the Mickey Views Magic Studio. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Thanks for all of your questions every week. Our first question this week comes from Jeff, who asks, what's going on with phase 3 and 4 over at Hollywood Studios? Are they canceled? The park refurbishment still doesn't feel entirely complete, in my opinion. What Jeff is talking about here is originally, when work was getting underway on the Hollywood Studios expansion, there were rumored to be 4 phases to the project of overhauling the entirety of Hollywood Studios, bringing it from the behind-the-scenes movie backlot style more towards the being immersed inside of the movie style. And currently we have 2 lands that live that new mandate where you're immersed inside of Star Wars with Galaxy's Edge, and then of course inside Andy's backyard with Toy Story Land. Now of course there's some other areas to wonder about, like what's going to happen with Star Tours. Are they going to do something with the Indiana Jones area? Are they going to make that into like a mini land? Are they going to expand it in some way with the new Indiana Jones soon to be in production here? Now the thing is, originally, the whole idea of the Hollywood Studios expansion was to change the flow of the park. Previously, the park had this sort of demented plus sign shape. It was a little bit of like a warped plus sign, and they wanted it to go to more of a circular crowd flow where you can go in through Galaxy's Edge and go all the way around and end up over at Tower of Terror. And the way that they were going to do that is with these land expansions. And the 4 phases were first Toy Story Land, then Galaxy's Edge, then the third was going to be an indoor version of Radiator Springs Racers, and then the 4th we were going to get a Monsters Inc. mini land. Those were the rumored expansions that were coming to Hollywood Studios, and we've gotten 2 of those. Now the thing with all long-term expansion projects in Walt Disney World and at Disney in general is things change. You have different people in charge of the parks now, you have different departments that have different needs than they did back then, so things aren't always going to stay exactly in line. If you recall when EPCOT opened, in the opening thing, the opening broadcast, they were talking about this is where Equatorial Africa is going to go. There were promotional materials for Spain and Israel pavilions and all sorts of stuff, and of course we didn't see those. And why was that? Well, right after EPCOT opened, we got a new CEO, Michael Eisner, read a change in management. And if you look at the parks between when the Hollywood Studios work started and now, we have a new parks chairman, you have new people at all the different departments that are involved in decisions like this, everything from consumer products to park operations to, stuff with like Reedy Creek Improvement District, which has to handle all the regulatory stuff, which is involved in making all these attractions happen and maintaining everything around the parks so that they are all good there. So when you have these super large long-term projects and visions, you do see stuff evolve as time goes on to fit the needs of the time. Because back when they were planning this all out in like 2013, 2014, obviously it wasn't the same time as what we are looking at now. The thing that has remained though, I think, is that Disney wants to make Disney's Hollywood Studios a circle, have a circular flow. They're obviously gonna have to do something with Rock and Roller Coaster soon here, which currently has Aerosmith in it, which really doesn't fit with the rest of the park, the theme of the park, or anything like that. And then of course you also have the old animation building and the Star Wars launch base stuff, which really isn't being utilized as it was as part of the theme park. Currently that whole animation building is being used as office space, which probably isn't the best utilization of theme park property, because obviously you can put offices pretty much anywhere on property or even off property for that matter. Disney has most of their offices for Walt Disney World over in Celebration, which of course they used to own, but now they do not. So the whole situation there is is I think they want to do something between Toy Story Land all the way over to Tower Terror, and the question is, what is that? Now, leading up to the D23 Expo in 2017, a big rumor was that that whole area was going to become a Monsters, Inc. land. Perhaps that whole area, perhaps part of that area, and this, of course, stems out of the original Phase 3 or 4 idea of doing a Monsters, Inc. mini land, which entailed taking the laugh floor from Magic Kingdom and moving it over to Hollywood Studios, perhaps doing another attraction like an e-ticket, and then also bringing some sort of cool dining, like the sushi restaurant, of course, something like that, like what they have in Monsters, Inc., sort of do like a sushi restaurant version of that. There are a lot of ideas like that for this Monsters, Inc. land that was rumored. Another thing we heard was the idea that they could re-theme Rock and Roller Coaster to being inside of the door factory inside of the world of Monsters, Inc. And this is interesting because if you recall, Superstar Limo in DCA, that disaster of an attraction, what was it reskinned with? It was with Monsters, Inc. So there's some sort of a precedent here for seeing Monsters, Inc. intellectual property coming into existing attractions and actually sort of switching things up and making it more, IP related, something that more people are likely to check out on their trips. So what is going on now, 2 years later after all those rumors of the Monsters, Inc. stuff, and none of that ended up panning out at the D23 Expo in 2017 or in 2019. And I think now that Galaxy's Edge is wrapping up and they're just working on some kinks with Rise of Resistance, once that's complete, and Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway is about to open here, and it sounds like it's been running great. Cast members are previewing the attraction right now. Once everything's wrapped up here, where is the ire going to focus next in that park? Obviously, it's going to be the animation courtyard and that whole area leading down the left side of Sunset Boulevard. What are they going to do with all that space? And that brings us right into our featured topic here today, because rumor has it, there's been a lot of buzz about this. According to Screamscape, the website that covers a lot of these sorts of rumors, they heard a little something about a possible giant Pixar Place that would extend from Toy Story Land all the way over to Rock and Roller Coaster, sort of like Pixar Pier that was recently completed at Disney California Adventure. So sort of having that concept of a land that's just generally Pixar, where you can have all sorts of mix and matched Pixar attractions throughout the land, rather than having to do like a self-contained Cars area, which was like Phase 3 or 4 of the original plan, or a self-contained little Monsters, Inc. area. Instead, you can just have one big Pixar land and have a bunch of stuff throughout it, which would be a very cool concept, and I think it is something that is definitely in the realm of possibilities. And the reason I suspect this is definitely something that could truly be in consideration is the fact, if you look at an idea like the idea of an indoor Radiator Springs Racers, what is the advantage on Disney's end there? They've already built Radiator Springs Racers before, except if they did an indoor version, they wouldn't have to worry about all that rock work or building some huge giant land. It could just be one standalone attraction based on stuff they've done in the past. So the development costs aren't very high. All they have to do is just really a matter of building the attraction, right? What is the advantage of bringing the laugh floor over from the Magic Kingdom? We already know the attraction's successful. We already know how to run it. We just build a new version of it. And then, of course, that frees up space in the Magic Kingdom for a new attraction over there. I've always wanted to see the Incredibles come to Tomorrowland personally. So I think there's a lot of ideas that could really work together here with this Pixar Place idea. Not to mention, we've talked about when are we going to get an Inside Out attraction. I think that would be a great place for it instead of it being shoehorned into the Imagination Pavilion in Epcot. I think I'd much rather see it in Hollywood Studios here. That would be pretty awesome. The only concern I have is there's also been some talk about what if Disney did an Avengers campus in Walt Disney World. Now, of course, with the Universal Marvel contract, which prohibits Disney from using the Avengers in the parks in Walt Disney World, it's really not something that's possible. The Avengers campus that they're doing out in Disney California Adventure, which by the way looks crazy, with the Stuntronics they're going to be utilizing, with an animatronic actually flying through the air as Spider-Man. I'm so excited to see that. I'm actually going to have to start covering Disneyland and like legitimately go out to cover that and see it, because that is such a feat of Imagineering. I was so happy when I saw that video Disney put out showing that. But what would Disney do if they were going to do something with Marvel in Walt Disney World? Where would it go? Originally, we thought Epcot, 'cause that's where they put Guardians, but it seems like that is no longer the case. It's probably likely that if we see more Marvel stuff, it'll end up somewhere else, likely over in Hollywood Studios. So let's say instead of doing a Pixar land, they did something else where maybe you have a smaller Pixar area, like a smaller Pixar Pier, Pixar Place type area, but you also have like a Doctor Strange attraction, which is one of those kind of like Avengers-esque characters that Disney might have some wiggle room with, similar to Guardians, which are sort of like Avengers adjacent, but not necessarily classified as an Avenger according to the Universal Marvel contracts. That's why Disney's able to build the Guardians coaster in EPCOT. So I really think that's something interesting to consider. Let me know your thoughts on what you'd like to see happen in that massive area. You know, your imagination can just run forever. That is so much space to work with. And I do like this idea of like a massive Pixar land. It might be better to have the Toy Story, you know, self-contained area we have, right, which is awesome. And then you have a Pixar area, like a more general Pixar area for some mix and match Pixar properties, and then still have some room for something Marvel related. Perhaps they do a Marvel retheme of Rock and Roller Coaster. I feel like Marvel is a little bit more adult, so it'd fit better with Rock and Roller Coaster, which is a pretty extreme coaster for Disney. Doing something like the Door Factory and Monsters Inc. would be a weird fit for Rock and Roller Coaster, given how extreme the coaster itself is. You would think if they would do something like Monsters Inc., it'd be generally appealing to kids, and Rock and Roller Coaster really isn't a kid's attraction. Although I have to say, every time I do Rock and Roller Coaster or see people getting on it, there are a lot of kids, you know, that just got to the height where they can ride it and they're super excited and have a great time. So who knows, really anything could happen here, but there's definitely a lot that could be done with that area. But I wanted to touch on that rumor, at least put it out in the universe, and let me know what your guys' thoughts are about it. Awesome question, Jeff. Our second question this week comes from Not So Small World, who asks, how long do you think it'll be till we get an update to Dinoland? Animal Kingdom has been open for over 20 years, and it still feels like the worst land in the park, and I think it needs a huge refurb or replacement. Now, something everyone keeps wondering, you know, for the last like 5 years or so, we've had all these huge expansions we've known about that have been in the works, and now they're starting to wrap up, right? We're getting the Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway. We're getting all the stuff in Hollywood Studios we've gotten. We got Galaxy's Edge, Toy Story Land. We have some 50th stuff coming to the Magic Kingdom, you know, Tron Coaster, and maybe some other things we'll hear about this year. But like, what's the next big thing? You know, a lot of people talking about like, what about a fifth park? I think Disney is going to continue focusing on improving the current parks, and even though it seems like stuff's like pretty much good there, there's still a lot of room for improvement I think Disney sees. And looking at the Animal Kingdom, which is one area where we haven't seen a lot of new development as of late, a lot of people are talking about an expansion to Pandora, which is definitely something to consider. Of course, we've also heard a lot about a Zootopia land potentially coming to the Animal Kingdom, sort of in like the Rafiki's Planet Watch area, since they're already making one for Shanghai Disney right now. Although previously we've talked about how Joe Rohde says that's not where Zootopia should go, because Zootopia is about human problems represented through animals, while the Animal Kingdom is supposed to be about animal problems, like real animal problems. And then people say, okay, but what about Avatar, which is about mining practices? That's something that affects animals, and it's about, you know, humans working with the environment with animals, so it sort of all ties together there, even with a property that is out of this world, like you have with Avatar. By the way, Pandora is my favorite land by far in Walt Disney World. I just wanted to say that. It is the best. It is the best thing that Disney's ever made. By far, bar none, it is the best land that Disney has ever made. I love Pandora. Of all the places I go, since I moved down here, I go to Pandora like at least once a week. I eat at the Satuli Canteen all the time. It's my favorite counter service in Walt Disney World. It's one of my favorite restaurants, period, quite frankly. But I really, really love that place. So I just wanted to put that out there. But looking at everything in Walt Disney World, in my opinion, the very next thing that I think Disney wants to focus on, like one of the top priorities, if not the top priority, is fixing Dinoland USA, perhaps even overhauling it. Because when I look at Dinoland USA, that whole area was built because they needed more attractions for kids and for families. When the Animal Kingdom opened, they realized they needed some more offerings, so that's why it was there. It was always meant to be temporary, just as a concept alone, why they even created it. And looking at everything else in the Animal Kingdom, I really don't feel like Dinoland is up to the same standard. There's a lot to like about Dinoland USA. If you sort of understand the theme of it, it's very bold, you know, making something look like it's like a carnival in a parking lot, but really it's in a Disney park. It's a cool idea in that aspect, but quite frankly, I don't really think it's up to par with the rest of the park or the resort in general, where it seems like Disney is definitely sort of upping it a notch in terms of what's being offered at the resort. And I feel like we've seen a lot of the more campy Eisner type things go by the wayside, you know, things like Pleasure Island and a lot of other stuff, which personally I always thought, you know, like as a kid, I never got to experience it, but I always thought stuff like that was cool and very, you know, kind of like out there. And I think that's also why it ended up going away, because it really wasn't, you know, the vein Disney wanted to go down. They want something a little bit more professional. And looking at Dinoland USA, what would they do with that area is a question, right? And I feel like the number one contender to replace Dinoland USA is not Tarzan, which is something that's been talked about a lot. The idea of a Tarzan rainforest roller coaster has always been an Imagineering concept that's been rumored. Also, there's been a lot of discussion about what if you put Indiana Jones in there. Of course, the issue is there. It doesn't go with Joe Rohde's mandate of it being about animals, animal problems, about humans interacting with animals. It's not really about any of those things. It's just Indiana Jones, right? It's the same thing with Zootopia. So when you look at that area, the number one contender, I think, is the Jungle Book. Replacing Dinoland USA. That's just my suspicion, because just think about this. If you look at the film, the live action film from a few years ago, Jungle Book, the vision that was put forth of a live action version of that world by Jon Favreau, it looks like it would fit so well in the animal kingdom. Like, by far. It looks incredible. You know, just look at the architecture and how that place looks with the sort of like decrepit temples and stuff. It would fit so well with what you already have in Asia and Africa, the other major lands that you have in the park. It would very much jive with them from a visual perspective, and also it would give Disney the opportunity to make one incredible new attraction. Likely, I think they would make some sort of e-ticket with the Jungle Book, and I think that would be amazing. There's a lot of areas they could go down with that. It could be a roller coaster. It could be a boat ride. It could be something like they did in Shanghai with pirates. That would be amazing. There's so many different directions they could go with that, and that is what I think we'll see happen there. That would be my prediction. There's so many different avenues and like so much potential there, just like what we were talking about with the Pixar Pier idea for Hollywood Studios, where it just seems like these ideas that seem to be on the way, that seem to be rumored, there's so much potential with them. You know, doing something new with the Dinoland USA area, doing something new with that whole back area of Hollywood Studios. So I'm really excited to see if Disney will announce anything related to those two properties. But looking forward in terms of what is the next big project Disney's going to do in Walt Disney World, I would look towards those two locations. Of course, beyond the big stuff we know that's happening in EPCOT right now. Let me know what you guys think about that. Great question. Thank you so much for watching Not So Small World. Nice username. Our third question this week comes from Diego, who asks, what IPs from the formerly called Fox do you think Disney would consider integrating to the parks? Oh boy, I wanted to bring this up because I just wanted to say, like, years after it's happened now, it's still so perplexing to me, the 20th Century Fox Disney acquisition. It's just, I don't understand this aspect, right? Do you remember when Disney acquired Star Wars for $4 billion? It was like the biggest deal. It was all the media was talking about for years, you know. They would run headlines, you know, Disney's worried about if they're going to be able to make back their investment on Star Wars. Disney's worried about this, Disney's worried about that. And then you look at this $71.3 billion acquisition Disney made of 20th Century Fox, and it's like, no one talks about it. Like, the media doesn't care. It's like, well, whatever. It's like so much bigger. It is so much more massive in terms of an acquisition compared to Star Wars. And I don't really know what Disney got out of it, quite frankly. They did get stuff out of it, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is when Disney first pitched the acquisition to the shareholder, a lot of it was about distribution, because 20th Century Fox owns these overseas networks where Disney would be able to bring their current Disney content and Marvel and Pixar and stuff to these whole new audiences. The thing is, in the deal we actually got, that stuff wasn't included. The TV networks weren't included. A lot of the TV production stuff was taken out of the deal. There was a lot of stuff that was taken out of the original deal, which, remember, was for $54.2 billion. Because what happened is Comcast was sort of involved and ended up bidding Disney up to that $71.3 billion price tag, and they actually got less than what they were originally going to get. Likely a lot of the stuff that wasn't included for other reasons besides money, probably having to do with like getting approval from the government for the acquisition and things like that. There's a lot of moving parts in something as big as this acquisition. But what's funny to me is, like, I just still don't understand all of it. You know, someone out there, smarter minds than me, understand all the things involved in this and why it costs so much. I mean, Disney went into debt to do this deal, and it's like, you know, no one really ever talks about it. We don't really see much of an impact on the parks or anything else. Of course, now Disney owns more movies that are coming out each year, which is obviously the most direct return on investment. But Bob Iger said at the time that the original interest in acquiring 20th Century Fox was not about, you know, like the infrastructure, right? Like the personnel they would get and all that sort of stuff to make more content. It was about their existing library because they wanted to fill up Disney Plus. And you see now we have The Simpsons on there and things like that. So I definitely think that was a good thing Iger did, sort of that idea. But for $71.3 billion, that is a lot of money. You know, we definitely got some extra cool stuff on Disney Plus, but it's like, where do you go now? Because if you look at the list of like Fox franchises that Disney now owns, none of them seem particularly Disney-esque. Like Pixar most definitely did, Marvel did, and even Star Wars to some extent. Those all have sort of like a Disney aura to them, you know, this sort of fantasy thing to them. They're all very imaginative. They're all very fantastical. They're all very family-oriented. And then you look at what they got, and it's like Die Hard, Independence Day. They got, like Ice Age. What else did they get? They got Avatar, which of course is one that definitely feels very Disney. But there's a lot of stuff here like the Kingsman franchise, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Does that really seem very Disney-esque? I'm not really sure. But I guess it is cool that Disney owns more stuff on their end because obviously they can make money off of that, and in turn that means more cool new stuff coming to the parks. So the question has been, obviously, now that Disney owns all these franchises, what are we going to see come to the parks as far as these franchises go? And my original reply would have been nothing. Because quite frankly, Fox does feel independent of Disney. Now it's just called, what is it called? 20th Century? Whatever Disney's calling it now. They took out the Fox part recently. That was an announcement they made. But whatever they're calling it now, it's sort of separate from Disney in terms of the offerings, in terms of the mood, in terms of who it's targeted towards. So it's not really something that I think we're going to see a lot of come to Disney anytime soon. The thing is, we've already seen Avatar, which was a Fox property, come to Walt Disney World. So what other properties that Fox had that Disney acquired could we see come to the parks? Obviously, Simpsons would be one, but Simpsons is already in Universal Orlando, and we don't even know the terms of that contract, if it can be broken, if some deal can be made where Disney can get that over to Walt Disney World. And then if you look at some of the other properties, one other one that I think they could put in the parks and get like an attendance spike and people wouldn't really think like, oh, isn't this not a Disney property, is Ice Age. I feel like if Disney did something with Ice Age in Walt Disney World, I don't think anyone would be like, is that really a Disney property? I feel like that's kind of weird. I feel like that would kind of fit in with the whole Disney idea. I think a lot of people would think, oh, that was a Disney movie, even though it really wasn't a Disney film franchise. So that would be my thoughts there. I think Ice Age has a possibility of coming. Simpsons, obviously, but Simpsons is currently in Universal Orlando. But those are the two where it seems kind of Disney-esque in terms of what they offer, whereas you look at the rest of the lineup that Fox has that Disney acquired, it's really not stuff that you think you would see incorporated into the parks. So those are my thoughts there. Something very interesting is that Harrison Ford is in this movie that they've been plugging in the parks called The Call of the Wild, and there's posters for it all over Disney Springs, like around the AMC Theater, of course. They have like backdrops for it and stuff that you can take Instagram photos in front of, and they also have massive posters of it in Hollywood Studios, like behind Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway and also in like the parking lot, advertising this Fox movie that was produced during the acquisition or a little bit before, I believe, and then, it's actually starring Harrison Ford, and I almost wonder if that's Disney trying to ingratiate those 20th Century Fox properties into the Disney umbrella by, associating it with Harrison Ford, who's in that movie, and of course Harrison Ford's in a lot of Disney stuff, of course with Star Wars. So sort of, using that Harrison Ford connection to sort of start to bring some of those properties that people don't identify Disney with over into the Disney umbrella. So that's something to keep in mind there. And maybe once that process is complete and we see more new stuff come out of the 20th Century apparatus that's not necessarily Disney specific, maybe that stuff will become Disney-esque and therefore be integrated into the parks in the future. But let me know your guys' ideas of what you think would be implemented in the parks that Fox owns. Looking at the list of franchises, I just really don't see anything in terms of what they have as offerings that Disney would be like clamoring at to incorporate into the parks, especially when we haven't seen stuff from a lot of awesome Disney animated films, Pixar films, Marvel stuff in the parks yet. So I feel like Disney still has a lot of property under their umbrella, under the roof that we already identify with Disney that they've yet to bring to the parks that we really want to see happen. So let me know what you guys think about that. Thank you so much for all the questions this week. Be sure to leave your Disney questions in the comments below and answer them right here on the show. Disney has announced that some brand new Mickey balloon ears are coming soon to Disneyland and Walt Disney World. The ears are $32 each and feature light up red Mickey balloons, of course the balloons that are sold in the parks. And these have actually already shown up in Disneyland at some select locations. So if this is something that looks cool to you, be sure to stay on the lookout because they are coming to Walt Disney World very soon as well. Personally, I'm waiting for the sporks. The sporks that are sold in Disneyland's Galaxy's Edge. They sell the sporks that used to be in Docking Bay 7 Food and Cargo. They're actually listed on the menu. They've still yet to come to Walt Disney World, although cast members in the land have been saying they should be landing shortly, so we'll see about that. All right, it's poll time. Last week we asked, when will the Guardians Cosmic Rewind coaster open? It looks like the majority of you said summer 2021, followed by spring 2021. I agree, I think those are some good guesses. It's just really hard to gauge because there's the question of them actually filming the content that's going to go on the projection screens, as well as the fact that we really can't see how how far progress is on the inside, since it's all in that big blue box. Thanks so much to everyone who voted this week based off of the questions we answered. Which IP would you like to see come most to Disney's Hollywood Studios? A, Monsters Inc., B, Cars, or C, Marvel? And yes, there is a contract issue with Universal with Marvel, where Disney can't put a lot of Marvel stuff in the parks, in Walt Disney World specifically. So I mean the properties they might have some wiggle room with, like Doctor Strange, for example. So if you want to see something like that over something like Cars and Monsters Inc., then that would be the one to go with there. To vote, be sure you're watching from the YouTube mobile app or on youtube.com on your computer. You should see a little info symbol right here. Just click there, make your vote. Your voice has been heard, and we'll read the results next week. That's all the latest talk in the world of Disney this week. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the latest Disney news and discussion right here on the show. We have a lot on the way. We're building a pop vinyl collection on the shelf, episode by episode. And this week, he's actually under my desk. I got to get him here. We have Chef Figment, who was sold at last year's Food and Wine Festival in EPCOT. A viewer actually gifted this to me, so shout out to him. Thank you so much. About time he gets on the shelf, right? That is so cool. Awesome. That's all for this episode of the Magic Weekly. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. This is Brayden. Have a magical day. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this week's episode of the Magic Weekly. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, a ton of fun to record. I don't know about you, but it's just so exciting talking about, some of these rumors and like areas where they could do new stuff, looking at like the top of Hollywood Studios, the Dinoland area. It's just all very exciting because there's so much Disney can do with it, and I really think they do want to do stuff with those areas. I'm sure those are areas they look at a lot, and I think we're getting close to the stages where Disney will start talking about stuff post 50th. Although part of me is hesitant because so much of the stuff they want to do for the 50th, we haven't even heard anything about yet, right? So it's like, they probably won't be telling us about their next plans until after that. But the thing is at Disney is to continue the growth we're seeing, you have to keep adding new stuff. So no doubt there's stuff in the works beyond the 50th. It's really just a question of, will it get green lit? When will we start seeing work on it? When will we start seeing things announced? The funny thing is the last 5 years, everything Disney's been working on, we've heard about like way in advance from Disney before they're even near the start of construction, right? I'm not sure if that'll always be the case because looking at Universal, they kind of do the opposite approach where they have stuff like mostly built before they even announce what it is. And oftentimes there's leaks and people have a pretty good idea of what's going on with it, but it's very much an opposite approach. And I almost wonder, looking at something like the 50th and Disney wanting to make sure everyone goes down for the 50th and everything, if maybe some of the stuff that they're going to do beyond that, they announce later, right? Instead of, constantly announcing stuff super far out. Because the thing that you risk is if you keep announcing something that's 2 years from now, 3 years from now, every year, people will just say, oh, I'll wait until that. Oh, I'll wait until that. Oh, I'll wait until that opens. And then they just keep pushing their trip back and then they never actually go, which of course wouldn't be good for Disney. So I almost wonder if they'll start doing more of that Universal strategy of sometimes holding the cards close to the vest, which would kind of be funny. It's very rare we see something where we really have no idea what's going on with it. That's something that I kind of like about the Guardians coaster. We don't know what's going on the inside of that at all. Over at Ratatouille, we know what the inside looks like because, it's like the one out in France, but looking at something like what you see with Guardians, like we really don't know what's going on in there. That's something that's really cool about it, in my opinion. So let me know what you guys think about that. Just some thoughts there. Very exciting stuff in the future. There's no doubt there's a lot happening at Walt Disney World already. I mean, just look at EPCOT. So there's definitely a lot on the way. And I think we'll continue to see that. And I'm very excited to see what exactly that is. And I'll be right here to continue covering it. And we'll see what exactly goes down because I think there's some cool stuff in the works, but we will see. Also, the Regal Eagle Barbecue Restaurant has opened in EPCOT. And I did walk past it. I was in EPCOT 2 days ago, but I have actually not checked it out yet or done any of the food or any of that stuff. So I think I'm going to do a vlog where we're going to do, a full construction update of everything going on in EPCOT. And then maybe in that video, or maybe even in a separate video, we'll take a look at what's going on with Regal Eagle. And I'll give you my take on that while we talk about everything else going on in EPCOT because there's so much going on. There are so many walls now. It's insane how many walls there are. Now it's gone to even the next level where you're entering from like not even under Spaceship Earth to get to the other areas of the park. You have to go around the outside of Spaceship Earth on the temporary bypass walkways. It is crazy. And I have a lot to show you guys filming wise. So I'll get to doing that EPCOT construction tour for February here. And I'll be back with you guys very soon. Thank you so much for watching. This is Brayden. That's a wrap. Woo!